So we have seen a lot of false academic credentials. I feel like it's a pandemic at this point in Kenya. Over 30% of good conducts are actually fake. For me, the shocking thing was that people have the audacity to forge a document that comes from the DCI.
We say people are our greatest asset. But when it comes to hiring, many organizations are still relying on gut feeling, assumptions, and hope. We liked them, they came recommended, they looked the part. Welcome to HR Uncensored. I'm Juliet Gateri, a HR consultant with over 15 years of experience, and I help organizations across industries build structure, manage performance, and navigate complex people dynamics. I'm joined by Joy Mwigwi, Associate Director of Peleza, a company that has been at the forefront of background verification, due diligence, and building trust systems for organizations across Africa.
So the way we do our background checks is all we need you to tell us is where you work.
Hi, Joy.
Hi, Juliet.
Welcome to HR Uncensored.
Thank you for having me.
This is a conversation that is very, very dear to me. Probably we can start off. Just take us through what you do, especially when it comes to background checks, verification processes, just the process.
Thank you, Juliet, for having us.
Yes.
And just to give an overview at Peleza, what we do, so we are in the compliance space, and this means we help companies do due diligence. And due diligence can vary. For example, we can talk about employment background checks, right? When you're bringing in someone as a potential employee, there's some things you want to authenticate or verify. This could look like their education background, their employment history, maybe their identity, criminal check. So these are verifications we can help you conduct, of course, within the confines of the law. So we are very keen to ensure we abide by the data privacy laws, not just in Kenya, but any other country operates. So those are one of the most, I would say, critical checks we help companies do. We also do KYC and KYB, which is know your customer and know your business verification. So ideally for financial institutions, learning institutions, before you onboard a consumer, you want to just have a history about them, right? So this is where Peleza comes in, and we help you. So we help your compliance and we help you mitigate the risk that could come in when you're bringing in either a new employee or a client on board.
Or a business partner.
Yes, for sure.
Something that is on now this discussion, HR Uncensored. There's this thing, we even did a poll to check whether the steps people take when it comes to the recruitment process. And when hiring, people said they only trust the CV and the interview.
Wow.
They never take the next step.
So
when somebody says trust your gut, what has been your experience, given the checks that you've done? Probably maybe you can share the good and the bad.
That's interesting, right? And I'll even speak even from our own personal experience, right? Because as much as we help clients, we also do verifications for internal staff. I cannot discredit that gut plays a very big role in hiring, because we're still human beings. That instinct is still there. And it serves a purpose, but you cannot just rely on that, especially in a day and age where technology is helping our CVs look better, right? It's helping us show us in interviews very differently. You need to go an extra step, and this extra step is verification. It's one thing to look at a CV and for it to wow you. It's another thing to have an interview and it goes amazing, but it's another thing to actually bring in this candidate and see them perform. And so background checks, we see a lot of people have a misconception, and they think background checks is we are looking for a reason not to give you a job. Actually, background checks is the opposite. We are actually looking for a reason. The employer is looking for a reason to choose you, because sometimes they have two very good candidates and they're not able to, to make the cut and say, who do we choose over the other? So a background check is just giving you that boost of confidence to say, when we look at this person, these are the things we found out about them. And background checks reveal a lot of good things. You'll, for example, be able to look at someone's past work history. You can see their professionalism. Someone has gotten promotion. Someone has come in and they've been able to work their way up. Someone is able to mentor other people, right? Those are really good things that sometimes would not come out when you're just having a conversation with someone, right? Sometimes you'll be able to pick out, there are things they do in their free time that helps them grow. Some people are taking more educational courses, they're volunteering. These are things could be important in certain institutions, right? So there's a lot of good. Actually, a big percentage of background checks reveals the good, and it gives a reason for an employer to hire you. Of course, there's also the bad. And the bad is we always came to say we want the right people to get the jobs. So imagine you've both gone to school, you've started your employment, you both show up for an interview. Someone shows up with a fake degree. right? And for example, you were not fortunate enough to get a degree, you've done up to diploma level. Of course, they already have a upper hand.
Yeah.
But it's unfortunate that whatever is giving them an upper hand is actually a credential that is not even valid, right? So we have seen a lot of false academic credentials. I feel like it's a pandemic at this point in Kenya, and we've seen it from the highest of levels. We've seen CEOs, we've seen
With the fake degrees.
Yes, with fake degrees, and they've moved from company to company. And then a company just decides, we want to do a full scope background check, and this comes out, and they're like, how do we even handle this? This is someone who's like 10 years work experience. So we've seen it from your very high level to your very entry level. I mean, integrity cuts across, right?
Okay.
We've seen inflation of job titles. We've seen inflation and extension of work periods. If I've worked for 1 year, in your job advert, you've said, we're looking for 2 years. Of course, I'll put in my 2 years. And then when we verify, we find out that's not true. And all we say, it's about integrity. What do you value as a company? We're not saying someone without a degree cannot get a position. I think these days, recruiters don't even care that much about education.
Yeah.
But it's the integrity part, that if I'm willing to come in with a fake degree, what else am I willing to do? What else am I willing to doctor as I work for you?
Okay. Can you say it's a Kenyan thing? You've mentioned that you also do checks in other countries.
Yeah.
I'll just give you my experience. When I started my business 13 years ago, the integrity part was not as big as it is now.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's a Kenyan thing, whether it's not a big deal to lie,
Yeah.
or the jobs are not as many, so you want to remain as competitive.
For sure, and I think you've hit it right spot on. It doesn't mean we don't get like forgeries and these issues from other countries, but the truth is it's high in Kenya. And I believe one of the reasons is unemployment. The unemployment rate is so high that people are looking for a chance to compete in the market, and you're willing to do whatever it takes to get, a leg up, including embellishing your CV, buying credentials and certificates and all that. So it's very prevalent in Kenya, to be very honest. So I think that competitiveness, people feel like if a job advert says I need to have this certification and I don't have it, I'm not willing to show up as just myself and say, hey, this is what I bring to the table. I'd rather go and, cook up something and present and say, I also have this verification, without realizing how serious it can be. Because for some roles, the education background plays a very big
If it's a
factor.
technical role.
It's a technical
It's
role.
a doctor, you cannot.
Right? Some skills, you either have them or you don't. So I do believe the unemployment rate has played a long way, but I also believe we're being challenged as a society in terms of trust, unfortunately. So I think, it's not just about leaders. I think we as ourselves, we look within, I think we do have a problem of integrity, and we're willing to maybe bend the truth a little bit if it can benefit us.
Okay. And for small businesses, because I deal a lot with small businesses, I don't think they are still open to do background checks. I think many factors. One of them is cost. They feel it's an expensive venture. The other thing, sometimes they're desperate. Somebody maybe didn't show up today, and I need my work to be done immediately. I think the other factor also, with family businesses, they also hire referrals. So they hire somebody's cousin. So they also don't want to ruffle the feathers if they get to know the truth.
Yeah. That's an interesting perspective. And, it's beautiful because the Peleze is also just like Alternate Doors. We are a Kenyan company from the ground up, right? So we've also been a startup, and we serve a lot of startups. So we understand that challenge. Sometimes, of course, you look at your recruitment process and you're saying, this extra 4,000, 3,000, I don't have it, I can't spare it. But what we've come to learn, again, even in our own experience, and we've also been in situations where pressure is mounting. Someone needed to report for a role, they didn't report, and you need someone as quickly as possible. So you're willing to overlook so many things, right, to get the right person. And what we say is, don't look at it as a cost, look at it as an investment, a risk mitigation investment, because what you will risk to lose by bringing in the wrong person is more than that 2,000 or 3,000. And people think background checks are expensive. I feel like that's a misconception. I mean, Juliet, we have checks that even cost 100 shillings, and people don't even know that, right? For a basic entry-level person, 3,000 would be enough to just do your maybe your education and a very basic employment, right? So these checks are customizable. You come in, we have a conversation, you say, this is what I'm looking to find out, and this is my budget. And I don't believe we ever turned away a client because of budget. So one, it's a misconception. And then two, so you bring in someone, especially as I said, family businesses, it's a referral. This person is good, you bring them on. And then you have to wait. It's a risk. So you have to give it like 3 months to actually see whether this person can perform or not. And then imagine after 3 months, you have to let them go and start the process all over again. Anyone who's done recruitment and hiring understands how expensive turnover is. You will end up spending so much money as compared to the 3,000 or 4,000 you would have spent initially to just confirm that is. And I'm not saying background checks are foolproof. Right? We're not saying that if you do a background check, someone will not misbehave. No. But we're just saying we're giving you information so that your decision is better informed.
Okay. There's also this tendency of companies, I've been in that situation. Companies do not want to say bad things about somebody who even left in a bad way. I've been in this situation. I think one of the situations we worked with you, one of your team members, the company was not picking calls, was not replying to emails. But now one of your team members had to go physically to the company. I think I need to thank you for that. You really saved me from I'm still retaining that client up to now because of that process. So when they went there, they were kicked out. So they said, we don't want to talk about this person. So it's a red
flag.
Yes.
Rightfully so. And those are some of the challenges we encounter when we're doing background checks. And we're very honest with our clients to say, sometimes we let you know when we've hit a dead end. But by the time we're coming back to you, we're saying you've hit a dead end. We've tried everything. We'll walk out. We have camped in offices. I mean, there are people who, they know us. They hear police, they're like, you guys, you're on my case. You guys show up. You refuse to leave until I give you feedback, right? And they may not like it when they're on that end, but when they need us to do the background check, then they appreciate that
your process,
thoroughness, right? And the detail-oriented, and that, like, we're not willing to give up. And we always say sometimes we may not get feedback, but there are things to look out for. That situation is a red flag. Because the minute a company is saying, we don't want to talk about this employee, we are not willing to say anything, and someone has probably worked there for like 2 or 3 years, it's concerning, right? And what we do is we give you that feedback and we tell you, we feel now, that's where the gut instinct comes in, right? Because then we tell you, based on the experience we've had, we've shown up, we've called, we've done all these things, and they're saying no comment. What do you think that means for you as a HR? And for most HRs, when you sit with that feeling, then you'll feel a feeling of uncomfortability, because it's one thing for someone to even give the basic, where they say, we'll not speak about their character, but yes, we confirm they worked here for this period and this title. But if someone is not willing to even give that bare minimum, then for us, we say it's a red flag.
Okay. Or sometimes they just say, okay, he was okay.
Yeah, he was there. He was good, and that's it. And they're like, you want to speak more about it? They're like, no, we're not willing to. And we also respect that their data sources and their people on the other side. I think a lot of people don't realize that the data sources are also individuals. These are HR persons, right? And they have a code of conduct, of ethics, where they understand that they can only and they should only give information that is true and information that can be backed up. So sometimes maybe something happened with a former employee. It was not maybe recorded. It was not included in their file. So they're not willing to speak about it, because we say anything you give us should be backed up. Because by law, a candidate should have access to that report. And they can dispute and say they're allowed. So now by law, if you say something about me, I have the right to see, what did Juliet say about me?
And then I take you to court.
Thank you, right?
Especially if I left in a bad way. There was no disciplinary process. You just told me to leave.
Yes, and that happens a lot. Whereby something happens and you give them a leeway and tell them resign. Right? Especially where fraud is involved. A lot of companies will just tell you to resign. So they cannot come now and say you had a fraud issue, because they did not follow the legal process. They did not even report it. They just let you go. So in such a situation, then they'll say, we are not willing to give a comment. And you understand why, because the minute you say Joy worked here and some monies were lost when she was working here, and you cannot prove it, then of course I can also take you to court. So we've had instances where feedback will come in, and a candidate has sort of tried to threaten the data source or threaten the HR where they formerly worked, and they know they messed up and they know something happened. So we've had such situations where HR tell us, someone showed up at our company and they wanted to know what information I give. So we are also very careful to understand that there are also people on the other end, and we have a duty of care to both the candidate who we are doing the verification for, to our client, but to also the data source who is still an individual, because we don't get data from institutions, right? There's still people on the other end. So we're very careful to ensure we're also looking at data privacy from all those three facets.
Okay. And do you also encounter the other way? There's still fraud in this process where you'll ask me, because I need to give consent, and I need to give you contacts of the HR. So can I fake the contacts of my HR? Tell my friend, your name today is Joy. You are my HR. Feleza is going to call you. Say nice things.
That's also a very interesting take. And that's why we really advocate for background checks, because the way we do background checks is very different. One of the things is we never ask our candidates for contacts. We don't want to know we don't want to know, don't tell us who your HR was. And some will come up front and say, this is the person, these are the phone numbers. And we're like, yeah, but we don't need that. Because when we approach it from that perspective, it becomes a reference check. Who do you put down as your referees? Of course, people who will vouch for you, your uncles, your aunties, your friends, right? So we always say that check is already rigged. So when HR are saying, but we do reference checks, but then we ask, who would you put down as your referee? You'd never put anyone who would give a contradictory opinion about you. So the way we do our background checks is all we need you to tell us is where you worked. That's enough.
That's it.
Yeah.
And then
we do our own, we'll handle it our way. We'll find our own contacts for the HR. We'll find our own contacts for the line manager. So even if you'd planned to collude with someone, for us, we'll not go to the person you think. Sometimes someone will come and say, this is the person you should speak to. But then when we do our own verification, you find out that's actually not the HR. Someone else is the HR. So why would we go to your contact?
So as long as I've given consent,
yes,
you can contact anyone.
We can contact anyone, and our consent form is very clear that we go back to either the places you've worked, the places you've gone to school, right, or any public databases to get information about you. So we'll tell you where we're going, but then once you've given us that signature and you're saying, guys, you can go ahead and proceed, then the process is up to us. It's up to us to decide how we want to get that information. Still, legally, let me just be very keen to add, it's not an investigation. That's where you give consent, and that's where you can have access to your report. So we'll not put anything that cannot be backed up.
Okay. And what happens in informal checks? Because I've done that. Previously, I've received something informal.
Yeah.
The HR doesn't want to put anything in writing.
Oh, Juliet, that's very nice, to be very honest with you. And it happens, especially in the situations we're talking about, where something happened, we didn't follow maybe due process, or we didn't, pursue it legally. But then the HR is feeling a certain form of responsibility that this person will go to another company and they may do the same thing, right? So when we reach out, they feel like, if I don't say anything, I'm just moving a problem from company A to B to. And I think that happens a lot in some industries. Let me not quote here, but there are industries where they refuse to share information among themselves. And with us, they just refuse. They say company policies to do the bare minimum. So they'll tell you the periods, they'll tell you the position, and that's it. And this is a big industry. So what that means is fraud is so prevalent in that industry, because then employees keep moving from one similar company to another, because no one
want to mention the industry.
no one talks about.
Do you want to mention the industry? No.
It's banking. I think we can just leave it at it's banking, and it's their policies, and we understand that, but you can see the problem it creates, because I can live here
moving the problem.
That's a thing, right? So the informal information, as I said, it's dicey. Remember, now we have a Data Privacy Act, right? That is very categorical to say, if you give any information about me, I have the right to know. And especially if that information, for example, bars me from getting an opportunity. So if we get informal information, how would we present that? Right? Because then you'll not give this person a job, and this person asks you, Juliet, we did an interview, everything went well, we were having a good time, you said I'm fit for the role, and then you dropped me. And they will ask, and you, for example, you'll say, I did a background check with Beleza, and they'll say, can I see my report? And you provide the report, and the report will look clean if the information gotten was informal, because we can't back it up, right? Because maybe someone on a call said, when Joy was working here, this happened. So I think now we're very keen we approach it on a case-to-case basis. We are keen to also not get ourselves and our candidates in trouble. Because if someone tells us something about you that we cannot substantiate, then legally we've opened a door, right, of a lot of questions being asked. Because how then does a HR justify why they did not give you that opportunity? Right? How do they say, oh, I received a call from, Peleza, and they said this HR said it becomes gossip. And we've seen, I think a month ago, where the ODPC delivered a ruling, right? Because someone lost an opportunity. And when they were asked, they were asking to see their report, right? Some information had not been put in the report. So it was that. It's like gossip or word of mouth. So now we're very keen to tell HRs, if you give us any information, make sure it can be backed up. So let me say, maybe in a way, the law is sort of restricting and tying our hands, because then we cannot give any, we are shying away from talking of anything that is informal and that cannot be backed up.
There's a situation that happened to me. I think we also worked with fellas on that recruitment. A candidate we took, it was a final candidate, so we were now doing background checks.
Yeah.
So eventually, one of the supervisors Peleza reached out to them to do the background checks.
Yeah.
And then they knew which organization the candidate was going to.
Oh.
So what they did, they wrote a letter directly to the organization saying this is not a good candidate.
Wow.
Yeah, but what they said on the Peleza report was different. But that ended up the candidate not getting the job.
That's also very interesting. And it can be unfortunate sometimes, because we also say we are human beings, right? Sometimes an employee will work somewhere and they'll not get along with, let's say, the supervisor or their manager. And sometimes if the manager knows now this person is moving and they're looking for opportunities, sometimes we say, if you don't handle background checks very well, you can put a target on someone's back. Right? Because I'm working for you and now I'm looking, Joy is looking to move. She's, sometimes there's that human element, even without, intending subconsciously, someone starts sort of feeling like, okay, now you're planning to leave me, and maybe they're not ready for you to leave. So unfortunately, we've had situations where former employers will sabotage an employee. And one of the things we're very keen on, for example, is we say when you're doing background checks, we don't contact current employment until this candidate resigns. Because the unfortunate truth is some HRs, when they know an employee is looking to move, then they start creating problems and they start sort of, for lack of a better word, hunting them, right? And looking for problems, right? So we are keen to tell our clients, if someone is still formally employed somewhere, we don't touch that. Until the day they resign is when we go back to that employer and now say, can we get a record of them? Because
once they start with a new employer, before the probation period
ends, right? Because look at this situation, I'm planning to move. My employer knows I'm planning to move. They start sabotaging me. Then, like what happened in that case, they give a bad report. My potential employer turns me down. They pull back their offer, right? And then where I thought I would go back, my HR knows I'm looking, so they don't want me anymore. So you see, you've actually taken away someone's livelihood. So we're very careful about that, because again, you could also get into legal trouble, right? Because then this person can come in and say, based on how you conducted your process, my former employer let me go and I did not get the offer I was looking to get. So we also are very keen to understand these are people's lives and livelihoods, so we don't play around with them. So we say, for example, in that situation, wait until someone completely resigns. That's when you go back and you do a verification. But we also implore HRs, when we're reaching out to you to do these verifications, right? Abide by that code. There's a code of HRs, a code of ethics and integrity, right? So don't be malicious. If truly there was no altercation or situation with this candidate, then don't look for a reason just because you hear they're leaving. And if truly something happened, then when Peleza reaches out, you want to give that information, but understand that you can back up this information, because this candidate has a right to question that information by law. So don't put things based on feelings. I feel like this candidate has an attitude. If someone asks you to back up that they had an attitude, what does that
no
look
performance
like?
review where
Right?
it was written. Okay. I was so excited to start this session. I didn't start it formally. They really started.
Yeah.
I'm just going to ask you a few questions.
Sure.
Hire or fire? Hire is a yes. Fire is a no.
Okay.
Hiring based on gut feeling?
That's fire.
Hiring first and checking later?
Fire.
Trusting a polished CV at a face value?
Fire.
Ignoring small inconsistencies because the candidate is highly skilled?
Fire. Okay.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I want to go back to each and every check what you do.
Okay.
So the first one is education.
Mm-hmm.
So what exactly do you check on the education side?
Okay, great. That's a good question, right? So the first thing we check is, because there's some documents we need for us to do a verification. As I mentioned, this is not an investigation, right? So because we have consent, we will, for example, require that the candidate provides, if, for example, I say I went to Nairobi University, we will request that you provide that certification. Now, the first thing we do is we're very keen to say we go to the primary data source. And what this means is in all our verification processes, we go to the bodies who are mandated to hold that information. So in education, for example, where you went to school, those are the people who are expected to hold that information about you. There could be other bodies and other people who say, I also have education information, but we'll only go, for example, to Nairobi University. So the first thing we do with the institution is we check for the validity of that certificate you've provided, because that's where now the integrity comes in. Because it's one thing to attend a school and go through education, but it's very different to go through graduation and actually get a certificate from the institution. It's another to maybe not graduate and go somewhere, Cyber, River Road, and have a certificate, made up. So the first thing they'll check is the authenticity. And this is the first level where sometimes they'll come back, an institution will come back and tell us, this document is not from us. These signatures are not our VC and chancellor signatures. There's some things we've picked out in the certificate, the emblems, this does not belong to us. Already by first level, that means that is a candidate you maybe don't want to move ahead with, because where did they get this certification from? Then the second level is, did this person now actually attend? Did they join the institution? Did they go through the coursework, right? And did they actually graduate? Why? We have people who join institutions, but they don't complete. And there are people, and we've had instances where we'll provide a report and someone says, no, I went there, and they will show photos. They will produce photos. When they were in the institution, they will show you all these things, but they never graduated. So someone feels, I did my 3.5 years, though it was supposed to be a 4-year period. Something happened, maybe I dropped out, lack of funds, so I'm not going to let that go to waste. So I'll still have a document made and I can present it. So those are the two key things we look at when we're doing an education verification.
So you check high school or from high school?
From all levels. So we can do high school, which is usually the next KCSE verifications. And then we can do the degrees, right? We can do the diplomas, the certifications, the masters, all the way. And let me also say something interesting. Sometimes, especially for the high level candidates, you will find out that we push sometimes for 2-level education. Why? Because someone, especially in middle management, for sure, they did their undergrad. Everything checks out. But they know when they get to a certain level in their career, a master's is expected. So what do? Most institutions don't check your undergrad when they're registering you for a master's. Actually, locally, I doubt if any institution who
They don't check?
No. You show up, you pay.
Oh, so you can take that certificate that you printed,
Correct,
and you join a master's course.
Correct. Most of them they don't verify. They don't actually check your undergrad is valid and everything else. So we have very many cases of people who the undergrad is valid, it's very good, but then they fake the masters and they cook up a masters. Then you will assume, if I check the undergrad and it checks out, of course the masters is legitimate, right? Or someone truly applies for a masters, but the undergrad certificate was forged. But they actually did a master's, but the initial certificate is actually fake. So one certificate is legit, the other one is a forgery.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's education.
Yes.
The next one is references, previous employment.
Yes.
So that one you just check with HR or the business owner.
So we check with the
supervisor.
business owner, depending, of course, on the position you held and the size of the company. For our startups, our SMEs, most of the time you'll see it's the owner, could be sometimes the directors who may give information about you. Sometimes the small companies, they don't have a HR person, right? So some of them may have a HR person sitting in. That's the person we deal with. Then we also get in line with your line manager and your supervisor, especially for big companies. Why? You'll have a HRBP handling 1,000 employees. I ask about Juliet. Truly in the file, it's the very bare minimum. Your periods of employment, your position, your titles, and your JD. But there's more we want to know, right? We want to know, for example, your professional conduct. We want to know your delivery, right? That can only come from the person who worked closely with you. Now that's where your line manager or your supervisor comes in. And at Peleza, we are keen to separate an employment check and a reference check. So we completely separate them. So what we do at Peleza is employment checks. We dissuade, we dissuade referral checks. We actually advise against, but some clients will still insist and say, still go ahead and do a professional reference check, and we'll do it. But we also say it's a disclaimer. Just know that the information you're getting is probably, it's biased. Yeah.
Okay. And then there is the criminal check.
Mm-hmm.
Is that where you check the ID?
So we have two checks there, right? So the identity check is where we check the ID.
Yeah.
Right? And this is where we check, of course, in Kenya, for example, the holders of identity information is the Ministry of Inter and Coordination. So here is where we just want to validate your identity details. And this is very important, especially for KYC. Let's say you have a lending business, right? You're bringing in people, you're onboarding as many people as you can, right? You want to confirm the identity of these people. We've had instances where people will use IDs that don't belong to them, right? So if you're lending and you're giving me some money, you really need to be sure about my identity. But then we now have a criminal check. Now that one is an interesting check. And a lot of people, again, overlook it. Right? Let me say something interesting. In a criminal check, about a local criminal check for a Kenyan citizen, one of the things we're all familiar with is a good conduct, right? So people say good conduct. When you're applying for a job, you present a good conduct. And most HRs will take the good conduct and they will file it. Now, to my own surprise, this surprises me to date, that over 30% of good conducts are actually fake.
So people use AI. That's actually my next question. Do people use AI for IDs and good conduct?
So for good conduct, it's not even AI, to be honest, because
it can just be printed.
To cyber, it's very basic. Your graphic design, a cyber person can be able to come up with a replica of a good conduct. I've been doing this for years, right? So that's really simple to do. For me, the shocking thing was that people have the audacity to forge a document that comes from the DCI. I thought there would be some fear. I think Kenyans don't fear anything. So we've seen a lot of those. So the first thing here we also check is the authenticity. And I will tell you for sure, in a month, we'll get a good number from the DCI and they confirm and they tell us this document does not come from us. So someone just went, they cooked, they go to a cyber, they try and replicate how that document looks like. But very quickly, of course, the DCI can be able to pick out, this is not our document. So that's the first level of verification. It's the authenticity of the good conduct.
Is that where you ask for the receipt?
That's where we ask for it. Because we know someone can go and cook, someone can go and manufacture this document. Already, we've caught you. In that first level, you've already failed the question of integrity. Before we even get whether you have a criminal record or not, you cooked that document. Already there's a question of integrity, right? And then the second level is now where we actually check whether you have a criminal record, right? Because the DCI actually does maintain this information. And a lot of people are not familiar with it, but they actually do maintain this. And that's why they take your fingerprints. So they can be able to do a collaboration and they can be able to check and see, is this person in the database we hold for people who have had their fingerprints taken for the issues that have gone through the court process. They would be able to flag that. So that's an interesting way. But maybe let me throw a spanner in the works. We have another type of a criminal check, which we call a global watch list. And it sounds, very advanced, but increasingly it's becoming very vital, and especially in the KYC, KYB space, but also for your senior leadership. So this is a check that looks for any adverse mentions globally. You're bringing in a director. You're bringing in a CEO, you're bringing in a COO, right? You want to know, have they been flagged for any adverse mentions anywhere in the world? And this will check all those crazy lists, your FBIs, your Interpol, your sanctions, It'll check PEP list, political exposure. That has become a big thing. I mean, you're bringing in a CEO, they're politically exposed. How does that affect your business, right? It's important for you to know. And those are things that people have overlooked. You can even bring in a junior employee who is politically exposed and can have a very big conflict of interest in your business. And they can take very small decisions that you think are small, but that will impact your company negatively, especially if they're politically exposed. Because that means someone could be working for you, but their motive is not the motive of your company. Because if I have political exposure, if I'm connected, let's say, to a certain political family, when I come to certain companies and I work in certain industries, my motive is very different. So those are things we say you need to be very careful about. Maybe I'm coming in, I'm an accountant, I have access to
Your money.
financial information. That's not even from a stealing perspective.
Or the
I
information.
can influence, yeah. And maybe, a family wants to get into a certain line of business similar to what you're doing. And I can be able to see how your company runs, And then a year or two, we're looking to buy you out and you're wondering, how did these people know I'm struggling? Things like that. Yeah.
Okay. And then the next one is social media.
Oh my goodness. I feel like this will ruffle a few feathers, right? We cannot ignore that we're living in the age of social media. I don't believe right now there's anyone who doesn't have a social media account, right? And we are very keen to say that this is not us being nosy. A lot of people say, but why would you do a social media check? You're being nosy, you're being snoopy. That's not the idea at all. We cannot separate and say right now that my digital identity has nothing to do with me. And I know a lot of people try to say, I have an online persona, right? And then there's me.
Yeah.
Well and good. All we're checking for is, may you have an online persona or leaning that could negatively impact your employer. And we see this, I think, every week, whereby, for example, I'm out somewhere, I'm having fun, right? And let's say on that day, like, Peleza, we have some branded t-shirts, right? And I have a t-shirt and it's showing Peleza, and it's Friday, I'm allowed to, go grab a drink, have a good time. But maybe the organization I work for example, there are people who work for maybe Christian-based organizations, right? There's a certain code of conduct that this employer has given you.
Even has signed. You have signed as an employee.
When you're coming on board, yeah. And then that day, me, I'm out there, I'm having fun, I'm on the tables, I'm dancing, it's my life, yeah? But then I have a hoodie or a t-shirt displaying the name of my employer. And then maybe in the video I'm cussing and I have this opinion that I'm stating that may not align with my employer. Now, when that goes to the social media, right, we've noticed what happens is people don't really care about the individual. If there is a company logo or name that they spot, the conversation will quickly shift. And they'll say, this is what Peleza stands for, right? This is what your employees are doing. Clearly, this is what. So imagine if it's, for example, a Christian-based organization. That goes maybe against their values. That goes against what they've portrayed. So what happens is we see these social media managers of these companies working so hard to try and clean up this reputation and saying, the views of the employee are not the views of the. How many times have we seen that happening? It's countless times, right?
Yeah.
Someone will get on social media and, for example, they'll say, they don't believe women should be in leadership, right? Women belong in the kitchen.
So you check all that.
That's
you
what
check all the social media pages.
All the social media, but we have the criteria we check for. That's what I'm saying. We're not being snoopy. We don't care that you're playing loud music in your house. We don't care that you drink. But we're looking, are there things that, you may say or do that could only negatively impact an employer?
Yeah.
So, for example, someone is giving such takes of misogyny. Juliet, you are running a company of alternate doors.
Women-led.
Thank you. And you're employing someone who says, but a woman cannot tell me anything.
No.
They belong in the kitchen. Already this employee would not work out. Let's just start there. So there's a criteria and there are things we look out for. And we say, as a company, it's for you to say, is this important to me?
So you'll give me the report?
Yes.
I'm the one to decide.
You decide. And that's the interesting things about background checks. We just give you information. We will never tell a client, don't hire, fire. Never. We just give you the information and we tell you make a decision. And we've had clients try to compel us. Tell me, Peleza, what should I do? Sometimes, especially if it's an existing employee, they've been there for a period of time, they've been doing a great job, and then you do a background check, oh my God, and then you realize things that you just didn't know.
Can you still do a background check on current employees?
Yes, you can, but again with consent. And it cannot be the consent they came in with at the start, unless that is very clearly stated in the contract. Okay. You could say maybe this is something we do continuously, and every time you want to do it, you ask for consent. And we've had people come in and say, but this person has worked for me for 5 years. And now you're telling me the degree was fake all along. What do you want me to do?
But they're working.
Thank you. And that's where we say background checks, we don't villainize. We say there's a lot of transparency in background checks. And we advise, have a conversation with your candidate. You decide what is important for you as a company. There's a company who will overlook some things, right? Me on a table.
Or even have a discussion. Please go back to school.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And there's an employer who will say, integrity for me, that's a breach of integrity, and I'm not willing to overlook.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other one that I always do is the finance check. Is the financial health check.
Yeah. Yes. Again, I say that's also an interesting one because people will ask, does it mean I can't have loans? everybody has loans, right? Including our own government. It's normal to have financial obligations. So the only thing we check for is someone responsible enough to meet their obligation. And especially based on the position you bring them in for. If I'm coming in as a receptionist, for example, and I have loans I don't pay out, you may not care that much. I'm coming in as an accountant. I'm coming in as a
finance manager.
Thank you. And you can say I have all these open obligations I'm not able to meet. And I'm having access to I'm having access to your finances. I'm having access to your bank accounts. All we say is there could be a temptation, not even for someone to steal, for someone to say, let me advance myself some of these monies, sort out a few obligations before anyone notices I've refunded the money. But things never work out like that, unfortunately. So all you're saying is, for sure, the world is running on credit, well and good, but are you responsible enough to want to meet your obligations? That's all so we're not saying that if someone has loans, you cannot give them a job. No,
Yeah.
that's not what we're saying.
Okay. I've had actually very interesting experiences when it came to that check. Some of my clients will not take finance managers who have, a very bad credit history.
Yeah.
And also in procurement, even that receptionist, because of the previous experience they had with the team. Because that one receptionist will influence another person so that they can create a chain of fraud.
Yeah.
So most companies do not really like that.
It happens. But if you're meeting your obligations, then someone has no problem giving you a job.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you do any other assessments like drug, mental health?
Oh, interesting. In this
personality
checks, yes. Yeah. So we used to do, like the medical checks and the drug checks, but we dropped them. Again, there's a lot to consider when you're also talking about medical checks, because you also want to be careful not to be discriminatory. A while back, you remember, especially due to some conditions like HIV, there was a lot of stigma initially. And we had situations where sometimes employers would not give people employment if maybe they've done a medical check and they've seen you have certain conditions. So again, in the age of data privacy, health data is very sensitive data. It's not just personal data; it's sensitive data, right? So there are also sort of indications of how should you handle such information. So we no longer do medical checks. We no longer do drug-related tests. They're important. They have their place. For example, in a manufacturing plant, a drug and an alcohol test is basic. Some manufacturing plants, every morning you will do an alcohol test because you're going to work with heavy machinery. They need to know you're in the right frame of mind. Again, they want to avoid accidents, right? And which could even lead to death, lawsuits, and all that. So in some industries, they're important and they're very vital. But as Peleza, that's not something we do at the moment. Okay. Personality tests, I think now increasingly in the age of AI and us having technology to help us present ourselves differently, I think personality tests are very important. Simulations, case studies, because now more than ever, it's about how does someone think. I mean, right now, ChatGPT will think for you. I'll be doing a virtual interview with you, and on the other end, the technical assessment, I have another computer and it's doing that.
Or even the ChatGPT is answering questions,
right? And I have my earpiece, and you'll not even know. But more importantly, I think the gap you're starting to see is, can you tell how a candidate thinks? Can you tell how people solve problems, right? And that's what now employers are looking for. Because everyone is looking very good and presenting themselves very well. But when it comes to the day-to-day, how do you problem solve, right? How do you think through a situation? What is your thought process like? So I think increasingly we'll see a lot of importance being put in on personality, simulations, case studies, because and especially the ones where we're saying you cannot manipulate them using AI. So for example, there are gamings, right? People are doing gaming, right? For employment purposes, before I give you that job, I will create this simulation and I'll have you sit in there and I'm actually able to see how you'll conduct yourself in such a situation. And I think increasingly we will see a rise in this, and hopefully very soon, Peleza will be involved in that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe before I go to another quickfire question, quickfire questions, maybe you can share. I want you to give us case studies. I'm really pushing for that, where you've seen the worst of the worst, where you are like, you didn't even imagine somebody, a human being can do that.
Wow. I think they surprise us let me talk about one that's really recent. That just surprised me.
Yeah.
So we were doing a verification of an an ex-employee, right? And they were an executive assistant of a certain director. And when we're doing the verification, turns out when we sent out the request, this employee was able to log into their director's, I don't know, laptop and accounts and all that. And they were able to do the verification for themselves. So you're doing a verification about Joy. So Joy logs in and responds as the director for her own verification. And when we had some queries and we went back, they still logged back in and were able to answer more questions that we were asking. And for the reason it was so I've never seen anything like that. I mean, it's 10 years in Pellet, I've never seen anything like that. One, honestly, I admire the audacity and the balls to literally do your own verification. I'm not even sure how they're able to access, but it's a PA,
they access every eye. Yeah.
But the mind process of someone going through and having the balls to say, I'm going to do my own verification and feeling like nobody would ever find out. And we come back again and you do another verification. So it's like you're doing a self-verification on yourself. And the interesting thing is they didn't even have a bad record. That was the most interesting thing. There were no red flags about them, right? So what is the motivation for you to go ahead and do something like that? I've never seen or experienced anything like that. But it can just make you think about how red that flag is. That an employee is willing to break and breach all those levels of security.
Maybe they didn't have a any case because it was never found out.
Yeah. But that was very interesting. Even you can imagine, even from the director's perspective, knowing that your PA has
logged into
and there's a lot of confidentiality there. Of course, trust has been broken, right? Of course, the integrity is questionable, because would you bring such an employee on board knowing that they're willing to, take such a risk? That has been an interesting one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll ask you a couple of questions.
Trust.
So skipping tie or fire again.
Mm-hmm.
Skipping checks to avoid losing strong candidates.
Fire.
Hiring a friend because you already trust them.
Fire.
So even friends, we have to do a check.
Oh my goodness, you have no idea.
But they've been my friends for 30 years.
Yeah, they're your friend. You've not worked with them professionally. That's how the problem comes in. And your family, especially family.
Yeah. So I have to do checks also for my family.
You need to. Or I actually, probably if possible, don't hire family. It never ends well.
Hiring someone who lied but can still do the job.
Oh, that's an interesting one. But I would still say fire.
Okay.
Because of integrity.
Not have a conversation. Maybe they are desperate.
Fire. Yeah.
Giving a second chance after a failed background check.
That's a dicey one. I'm not sure how to answer that. I feel like it depends. It could be a higher, because you also want to understand, you want to give voice and understand what happened, because as I mentioned, sometimes it could be bias from a former employer.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Assuming certificates are real without verification.
Fire.
Okay. So as we close, what's that one thing? I work a lot with SMEs.
Yeah.
Actually, that's my heartbeat.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy working with them. And for me, working with them, I also want them to be a bit more professional.
Yeah.
So what's one thing from your expert perspective that you'd want to tell them when it comes to this whole verification process?
We also love SMEs. I think, for us to even get where we are, truly, we've been built by SMEs. I think the one thing you especially where you sit, because you sit as a consultant and you're able to guide them, and they listen to you, because you're not really approaching them from a point of, this is my business and I want you guys to make me money. I think one of the important things you want them to really take on board is background checks it can no longer be a luxury, and you cannot see it as an unnecessary cost. It's an investment that they need to take into account, and it stems from leadership. Because the other challenge you've seen is, HR just follows processes.
Yeah.
And a HR may be pushing to do a background check, but if the leadership does not believe in risk mitigation, it will not work. So we say, let the leadership set tone and say, for anyone who's joining us, there's a level of risk mitigation we do. Even just mentioning to someone you're doing a background check already elicits something. Just by an employee knowing, when I join this company, they will do a background check on you. Trust me, it already weeds out.
Yeah, a lot of
good percentage of people will already be weeded out. mark you, there are still many who will remain who know they have issues, but they're confident enough to think, these guys will not find anything. Because people who decide to lie, the level of confidence they have in themselves, they believe the lie. But the first thing, when you just announce and say, anytime we're recruiting, please note we'll do a background check, there are people who drop off. So already your pool is, decreasing. And then when they come on board, just look at what's the very basic. We're not asking you to do a full-fledged, C-suite level for an entry level. We're very keen on tailor making. Just this is an entry-level employee. The bare minimum. The
Employment check.
Certificate.
Oh, a certificate.
Just verify that certificate. That's just
because this is somebody who probably has never had a job.
They've never had a job before. Yeah. That's like the bare minimum you could do. An ID is like 100 bob. Just do an ID check, right? And I feel like it also gives the employees a feeling of there's sort of some security that is expected.
Or I'm working with a serious company.
Yeah. Code of conduct that these people have. Yeah? As we say, even we have been an SME for a very long period of time. People don't show employees you're running like a kiosk. Present yourself like a big company. Even when you're a small company, present yourself like a big company, and your employees will align themselves and they'll feel like, it doesn't matter how small we are. These people have some things they've put in process. So have a process and tell them, we'll do an ID, maybe a criminal check, and we'll do an education.
That's all.
Yeah, that's enough. If they've worked,
so that's like maximum 1,000.
So no. Let me manage expectations. That could be maybe 3,000 or 3,000 to 4,000, right? But we're saying there's even a check like an education for like 2,000. We've done an education verification, and you're good to go. 100 bob, we've done your ID. You're good to go. If they've done maybe internships or they've worked maybe somewhere for 2 years, we can do a basic level employment or a performance. This is one we call performance-based employment check, where we're just checking this person worked here, give us the information, how did they perform? So at least you have some confidence, even if you're coming in and I'm training you, there's something you have that I can work with. So they can no longer overlook background checks. It's a necessity. It'll save you a lot of money, honestly, in the long run. It'll save you a lot of time because the hiring and firing, anyone who's done it before, you know how expensive it gets.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think something just came. What about court cases? Do you also do verification?
Well, that's an interesting question, Juliet. We've done
or members of union.
I think in Kenya and in Africa, unions is very different from how it's perceived globally and in other countries, because ideally you're not supposed to discriminate based on an employee being a member of a union. And honestly, it's not a very common check that we've seen. But we've not had that request before. Court cases, we have done these verifications before, but we've actually halted them. Yes, in all honesty, this year we've halted them. And the reason we halted is because we believe there's a loophole. And we don't want to give information to our clients if we cannot say 100% this check is, we've met all the provisions, right? So why? Because we have some loopholes in terms of how we get this information. Because at the moment, as much as you'll find some of the information online, we are not able, for example, to check for all the court records in, like, let's say we can tell you that in Mandera, we've actually checked and this person does not have an open case there. Remember also, there are open cases, there are closed cases. This information is varying. So we noticed there was a loophole, and we don't want to give information that we cannot 100% back up, because I don't want to come and tell you Joy does not have a court case, because they could have a court case, an ongoing court case in Mandera that has not even, maybe, for example, it's not concluded. So I may not be able to, for example, find it in the records. So we are very careful about that. So at the moment, we're not providing that check.
Okay.
Yeah.
I asked about court cases because some of my clients have asked me about that.
Yeah.
Because they've hired people who are very
tedious.
That's exactly.
Yeah.
So their job is to jump from one job to a company to another.
Yeah.
And suing them.
And that's a growing concern, and we've seen that a lot, and we've also had some clients come to us with that, where they feel like an employee has, you're moving from company to company, and suing, and we've been able to do that verification, but at the moment, because we are feeling we're not able to give the full scope of the information, that's why we've been able to take a pause on that. But it can come out in other ways. Sometimes when you're doing an employment, it has come out because a company will say, this candidate actually took us to court. So it may not come up in the court case verification, but it comes up sometimes from an employment verification.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you, Joy.
This
was
so
a
much.
very exciting topic.
It was. Thank you.
Yeah, very close to my heart as well.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining HR Uncensored.
Asante sana.
Yes. This episode is brought to you by Alternate Doors, your HR business partner.